Welcome back to Big News Wednesday. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Damage Report. I'm Iadarola. We got way too much news to cover today. New details on the shooter. We got text messages, we got Discord messages. Kenny Clips is all up in the news. We've got conspiracies starting to brew. We might have funding for the government. We might not. We'll see about that. And Kash Patel testified before Congress and ended up looking like a big dumb donkey because he is, and we checked this multiple times, a big dumb donkey. And so he looks like a fool, especially when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. So we'll be jumping into all that and more. Joining us to break down all the news, Sharon, how's it going?
It's going, just researching how to grow my own food in case, well, you know.
Yeah. In case leftist buying food at stores becomes outlawed by the federal government, maybe?
That part.
Yeah. Of course, for context, everybody, we did our show last Wednesday, and we did our show, and when I walked out, there was a person in our rows of desks and everything that told me about the shooting. So my last show with you was literally like the last minute before we found out about that. And obviously a lot has happened since then, but I'm gonna be curious to have your thoughts when we jump into it. It's good to have you back.
It's great to be here. A lot going on.
Yeah, in addition to all of that, I also wanted to just let you know about some of the stuff that's coming up in the aftermath. And so if you're listening to the podcast, definitely go check out youtube.com/The Damage Report. We put out clips every single day that are not on the podcast. We do a members hangout, which we're gonna be doing this Thursday, 30 minutes after the close of the aftermath, which should be a lot of fun. We do members content for our YouTube members as well. And coming up in this aftermath, we're gonna be talking about more of the history of slavery being erased by this government. An attempt to save Tesla from Elon Musk's toxic politics, defeated by Tesla. We're gonna talk about that and a whole lot more. So with all that said, hit the like button, share the stream, and we're gonna jump into this first story. Since yesterday, the alleged shooter of Charlie Kirk, Tyler Robinson, who you're seeing in that photo, has now been charged with aggravated murder. And in the meantime, we've learned quite a bit more about the communications that Tyler Robinson was up to during the final hours of the manhunt. We have text messages, there's Discord chats, and it seems to show quite a bit, although a lot of people, I would say a growing number of people, have some questions about the text messages. So first off, let's just lay out some of the more interesting tidbits and then we'll discuss. The texts with Robinson allegedly texting Robinson's roommate to quote, drop what you're doing, look under my keyboard, where Robinson had allegedly left a note that stated, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. So that apparently had been pre-planted for exactly this sort of stunt, which seems a little bit strange, in particular if you're not gonna be able to go back there and your plan is to not get caught. Leaving evidence that you did it is strange, but that's apparently what was texted. Robinson then says to the roommate, I'm still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in OREM for a little while longer. Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age. I am sorry to involve you, he says while involving the roommate. Totally needlessly, there's nothing in the text message that needs to be there, but okay. Roommate says, you weren't the one who did it, right? And Robinson says, I am, I'm sorry. Why? Why did I do it? Yeah, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out. If I'm able to grab my rifle unseen, I will have left no evidence. Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. And so because we have so little actual evidence about the political leanings or motivations of the shooter, this stood out to a lot of people as, well, that's a motivation. I mean, if he's saying, well, if this is authentic, and if he's saying it's what he perceives to be Charlie Kirk's hatred that is leading him to do that, then a lot of people jump to, well, then this is evidence that he is a leftist, which again, as I've said, I don't know, 500 times in the last week, it could well be. I do think that it's at least noteworthy to point out that nobody is even considering the possibility that there could be a conservative who believed rightly or wrongly, that what Charlie Kirk was saying was hateful and had a problem with it, or that if you believe that the hate that he's referencing in these text messages is tied to LGBTQ issues or trans people, that there couldn't be a Republican person who cared about those issues or a Republican person who was gay or trans. I mean, we know that there are many conservative gay individuals, some quite prominent. But the assumption is that if you cared about that issue, you had to also believe in universal basic income or a Green New Deal, which again is possible. I think that's a bit more of a leap than most people are taking, or think that they're taking. But anyway, the roommate then says, "How long have you been planning this?" To which Robinson says, "A bit over a week, I believe. I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it. I'm wishing I had circled back and grabbed it as soon as I got to my vehicle. I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. IDEK, I don't even know if I had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me. Or about prints, I had to leave it in a bush where I changed outfits. I didn't have the ability or time to bring it with. I might have to abandon it and hope they don't find prints. How the F will I explain losing it to my old man? Only thing I left was the rifle wrapped in a towel," which is very, very detailed. I look here. The person is allegedly on the run, hasn't probably been able to talk to anyone in a while. So maybe that's inspiring them to want to dish it all out. They have nerves, they're worried about being caught or something. Maybe they want to lay it all out. I will say there are some people who have said that the language in these texts sounds weirdly copy, like talking about sweeps and squad cars and stuff like that. But his family is cops, like his dad is a cop, right? So that doesn't necessarily seem strange to me. It's possible that he's heard all of that language or whatever. And yeah, I mean, all this could well be true. And I have to assume, I guess maybe I'm still naive, that it is. But I would say I'm a little bit less inclined to just blanket believe it than I would have been a couple of years ago. I mean, we're supposed to just pretend that like the DOJ is the same as it's always been. I mean, you know, they send the military to conquer American cities and they're trying to take unilateral control over our elections and they're trying to shut down and outlaw the left, but they wouldn't doctor text. And I'm not saying that they did, but I'm just saying, like, if somebody was going to, I mean, Kash Patel is not a serious person. He's a partisan actor. He's arguably more of a partisan actor than the target in this particular assassination. And so I don't know, Sharon, I want to bring you in. It's just, we're living in such crazy times that even me, a person who tries very hard not to be crazy, I feel like I'm being driven crazy. What do you think?
Well, I think you are. And you're not the only one. I think you're right to question everything. And I'm going to lean to trust but verify. Like, oh gosh, I'm quoting Ronald Reagan. But this is the climate we live in. We live in a climate where 14-year-old girls who are mean are probably soon going to be declared domestic terrorists. Isn't that what Pam Bondi wants? So, this guy, it's all too convenient. The confession, all of it. And I'm not saying he didn't do it, okay? The truth is his family got him to turn himself in. So we have to question everything with the current climate. We just have to.
Yeah. My assumption is that he did it. And my assumption also is that it would be very difficult for the text messages to not be authentic in that, although he is not cooperating, the roommate is apparently cooperating. And so presumably, if the text messages were not accurate, I mean, presumably the roommate would say something, right? Either to the media or to the investigators. I mean, again, you could then go a step further and be like, well, maybe they're putting pressure on the room. I don't know, but again, that gets more complicated and a little bit more complex in terms of how many people would have to be involved in it. And so, yeah, is the way that the person is talking there weird, but also the person engaged in an act of political violence. They are, at least by definition, to some extent insane. Like you can have, you can put together a plan and you can act on it, but you also believe that violence is a tool of politics that's legitimate. So I define you as crazy. So maybe he's just crazy in that particular way. I don't know. I would just, again, with all of the other ambiguity about every bit of the politics of this that has come out, I would not simply assume that if this person says that the reason they did this is because of the hatred of Charlie Kirk, that does not necessarily mean that they could not be a conservative. There are plenty of conservatives. Again, I'm not saying this is a Groyper thing. Groypers hate Charlie Kirk. So, and there could be, again, there are conservative gay people who might not like, the gay panic going on. There's trans people that are conservative that might not like the trans panic that has dominated the right wing for the past few years. So just throwing it out there, this is nuance, which I understand is never advantaged in our American political rhetoric. And there's a very real chance that it will result in me or other people losing their jobs. So just bear that in mind as we move on to the next bit of this, away from the text and now to Discord. Let's jump into this.
How's the FBI working to find other potential accomplices, folks who may have known about the shooter's plans, folks who may have encouraged him? Any update on any of that?
So in terms of what we do for an interrogation perspective, we go and reach out to the family and community immediately. And we've conducted those investigations and interrogations with local law enforcement. And we're continuing to do that because those closest to the suspect are going to hopefully know the most about the suspect and his beliefs and his ideology. On top of that, unfortunately, it has been leaked that there was a Discord chat. And for those unfamiliar with it, it's a gaming chat room online that the suspect participated in. So what we've already done is serve legal process, not just on Discord, so that the information we gathered is sustained and held in a evidentiary posture that we could use in prosecution should it be decided to do so. And we're also going to be investigating anyone and everyone involved in that Discord chat.
I just want to quickly note that I think it's very cute that he says in these situations, we do these things. He's like an FBI agent. He's just like all of them. He's a real boy. He's not a partisan hack who's put in that position. He's a real guy. And all the other FBI agents under him have lots of respect for him. But anyway, leaving aside that part and how much of just a constant disgrace it is for our country that he's in the position that he is, there is the Discord chat. And I don't trust anything Kash Patel has to say about it, but I do trust Ken Klippenstein. And Ken Klippenstein, longtime friend of the show, actually obtained chats from the Discord and spoke with some of the members of that Discord, doing great investigative journalism work here. And so this is not, a den of Antifa or whatever they wish it would be. It's not just like trans memes or whatever. It's a gaming place. The kid was a gamer who was online on Discord, as countless millions of Americans are. The friend who spoke to Ken Klippenstein described Robinson as a fairly typical of a young man his age from Utah, someone who loved the outdoors, was a gamer, and into guns. Quote, to all of us, he just seemed like a simple guy who liked playing games like Sea of Thieves, Deep Rock Galactic, and Helldivers 2. Loved to fish and loved to camp. It really did seem like that's all he was about. And if you're not a gamer, Sea of Thieves, Deep Rock Galactic, Helldivers 2 are very different sorts of games. But what they do share is that they're collaborative games. You get together in a small group and you hang out and you play or whatever, which seems to fit with the community that they had on Discord. The friend said, obviously he's okay with gay and trans people having a right to exist, but also believes in the Second Amendment. Typical leftist stuff, obsessed with the Second Amendment. Anyway, here are some of the messages from after the shooting. One person wrote, Charlie Kirk got shot. Another person said dead. I just saw the video, holy S. RIP, I guess. Bro didn't deserve to go out like that, sad. This all sounds very similar to a billion conversations going on Twitter, by the way. And then Zealous Monkey says, hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this. I'm surrendering through a sheriff friend in a few moments. Thanks for all the good times and laughs. You've all been so amazing. Thank you all for everything. And so, yeah, that was apparently the shooter, and that was how they were brought in, so it seems authentic. And interestingly, if this is a place that Tyler Robinson was hanging out and had these long-term friendships and all that, it would be a great place for strong evidence of some sort of hyper-partisan, bent, whether left or right. And again, it seems like another one that's coming up kind of empty. And what we have so far to go on in terms of a motivation, I understand that I'm focusing so much on that. I'm probably just biased towards that part of the story because the administration is coming for the left and is using this as an excuse to shut down their political opponents. I think his mom said that he'd become more left over the last year. Bearing in mind, this is a very conservative family. So when they say he became more left, what does that mean? I mean, I was told during the last two elections that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were both extremist leftist communists. The right has not generally had a great ability to define different points on the left to center spectrum. And then you have Kash Patel, who a couple days ago said he had a manifesto, but it was destroyed, but trust me, it existed. Which, no, I'm not gonna do that actually. And so again, it really seems like, yes, he might have had some positions that are typically associated with the left, like not wanting LGBTQ plus people to be wiped out by the federal government. And other than that, it seems like a nihilistic, terminally online person is what it seems like to me. But again, we have more details, we'll get to them. Sharon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think part of this is the obsession instantly, mostly by the Trump administration members of it, who wanted to quickly see how they could frame this. They released those text messages, but even before that, like the first words out of their mouths were partner, trans, relationship. What, I don't even know what that had to do with anything, okay? You go into his house, you're gonna research, look at things, talk to the roommate / partner, but they pushed that out there, I believe, for ill intent, reasons that they wanted you to say, oh, see, here we go. There's a trans component to this. And so, yeah, we gotta lean that way. He can't be one of ours. You gotta fit in this box or that box. And there's no allowance for people to be diverse.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the rush was always gonna be, as it is in every one of these incidents over the last at least 6 months, maybe a year, it's gotta be a trans person, it's gotta be a trans person, and maybe it is in this particular case. But no matter whether there's evidence or not, they always claim that it is, because more and more, the brain of the average conservative pundit or politician has just become more and more, the pie chart is just trans people. All day long, every issue, they just think about trans people. And by the way, that could end up being, in this case, the actual motivation, whether the person is traditionally left or not. It could be that it was something to do with the LGBTQ plus community, which would seem to be some evidence that maybe the crusade against trans people is radicalizing for some people who are off mentally and have access to guns. Just something to consider. But anyway, I don't want to just talk abstractly or zoomed out about the trans aspect of this. Even now, there's politicians like Ted Cruz that are trying to jump on that part of it. And so this is gonna get a little bit weird. I apologize for that part, but let's jump into Ted Cruz.
There is a transgender. There's a reference to, do you see my bulge?
Okay, so you're probably wondering how we got to the point where Ted Cruz is talking about bulges on the news, but see, he's a moron, and a hateful moron at that. Doesn't really follow the news or doesn't care when things have been debunked. And his job, of course, is to create viral moments around demonizing trans people and other out groups in society. And because of that, poor Caitlin Collins might well be traumatized for life. Let's show you the full back and forth between them, and then we'll try to figure out what's going on with Ted Cruz.
We know that the shell casings that he used in the rifle had Antifa slogans on them and had transgender slogans on them, and it appears from what's been reporting that there were extensive discussions in various Reddit and Discord organizations. To the extent others had foreknowledge and aided and assisted, that may well be a manifestation of Antifa violence or transgender violence. We've seen a disproportionate incident of transgender violence as well. And so examining what groups potentially are behind these acts of violence, I think it is overwhelmingly clear things like the anti-Semitic protest had money behind it. With respect to Charlie Kirk's murder, that is not determined yet, but I think it should be investigated very thoroughly.
Yeah, as Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, just said, right now they don't have any evidence of an organization. Obviously, they're still looking into this. But on the bullet casings, I don't remember there being a transgender one on there. I remember him saying there was one that said, if you could read this, you're gay. It was referencing internet memes. But on what you just said there about investigating,
there is. Hold on a second, Caitlin. There is a transgender
if there is funding.
Hold on, Caitlin. Caitlin, there is a transgender.
Go ahead.
There's a reference to. Do you see my bulge, which is, I'm told, is an online meme for transgenderism?
then you might want to talk to the person who told you that, because it's not. It's a furry thing. I mean, lots of people who use it online aren't particularly furries. It's just a meme that they use, but its origin is as a meme around furries. It has nothing to do with trans people. You can't just take whatever's there and be like, that'll be trans today. That's not actually how anything works. And earlier, of course, there was the belief that because TRN was on the bullets, that had something to do with trans people. And we quickly found out, which any FBI agent would already know, that it was just the stamp of the Turkish company that manufactures the bullets. But again, it's just too good to believe that it's trans people, because we want it to be trans people if you're on the right. It has to be about trans people, because as Ted Cruz says there has been disproportionate violence from trans people. And I thought about that. I'm not great at numbers, but I thought about that. And you know what I realized? He's actually right. There is disproportionate violence from trans people. It's just that he's right in the wrong direction. There is something like 1 out of 1,000 mass shootings is conducted by a trans person. There are far more than 1 in 1,000 people in America who are trans, which means trans people are committing disproportionately low levels of mass shootings and political violence. Why is nobody talking about that? I mean, we rebut the idea that it's a common thing because there's only like 2 that they've been able to point to. But out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds that happen every couple of months, they are far, far less likely to actually commit one than their numbers in the population. It's a disgusting lie and smear from Ted Cruz and all the other people, whether politicians or members of the media, that are pushing that idea. And so, Sharon, I want to get you in on this. It's like, what's the point in fact checking? He doesn't care. He's just trying to get something out of this. But what do you make of it?
I think number one, I pray that you never play that again. I cannot with Ted Cruz. I don't want him to say it again, regardless of what it means. But what it means is exactly the point. And he's just spewing nonsense. So is Nancy Mace and others, talking about how this was, all about and aimed at, Trump too, not just Charlie Kirk. It's whatever, because you can't really fact check them in real time when you're an American person, perhaps a parent, wondering about food prices and housing and caring for your children and everything else and being attacked. So a lot of it lives. It just lives, and then it gets bigger and bigger. And then you don't even realize that, this was another lie. You just made that up, didn't you?
Yeah, exactly. By the way, we don't have time to play the full stop, but he was talking, Caitlin Collins brought up the killing of Melissa Hortman and the killing of other people, shooting of other people. And he was like, no, that wasn't a right winger. I mean, he should be censured by the Senate. He won't be, but that's an insane lie. The guy we know from the people that lived with him, he voted for Donald Trump. He was a viewer of InfoWars. He was violently anti-choice. He was planning to kill other abortion providers. He apparently said that he worked at funeral homes so that he could investigate the bodies to see if they were killed by the COVID vaccine. He had Tim Walz, Ilhan Omar, and abortion doctors on his hit list. I don't know what his idea, I just can't tell. I don't know. And yet, for some reason, the fact that Tyler Robinson has a roommate who might be transitioning, that's all the proof that we need. This is the ridiculously topsy-turvy world of logic and reason that we live in. Anyway, with that said, we should take our first break because there is so much more news to get to after this. Okay, everybody. Thank you, Anthony McClendon, for gifting 10 memberships. That is very nice of you. I appreciate it. Stacy, thank you for being a member. I see you out there. Panda Dragon for being one. CDN Norse Dog Dad for gifting a membership. Thank you so much. Baspera, member for 15 months, says, I am starting to think the Gov is transing the representatives. I think that's a sarcastic joke about the way the right talks about that. Brett the Bulldog Dragon, member for 34 months, says, it is super hard for me to believe anything that comes out of this FBI and Department of Justice. I agree. And by the way, I hate even questioning it in a story like this because I have throughout my entire career, I've despised how many people with prominent, huge audiences just believe anything that sounds good to them and instantly don't believe anything that doesn't. I don't want to even seem like that's what I'm doing. And again, I still lean towards believing that the texts are authentic because, as I said, the roommate would presumably blow the whistle on if they were making them up. But that said, these are liars. These are insane, evil people in this administration. They have a campaign that they want to wage against the left to kill the left entirely. They were planning it before Charlie Kirk. It has nothing to do with Charlie Kirk. They're just callously using his death to accomplish their vicious political ends. But like, you don't think that they would be willing to make up a text message in pursuit of that? And again, I'm not saying that they did, but it seems crazy to think that they wouldn't. Well, because that's unethical. What the hell would Kash Patel care? You think Pam Bondi cares about ethics with all that she's done? They're covering up the Epstein thing right now, but I'm supposed to give them free points on ethics? It's madness, utter madness. James Hickson, member for 14 months, says, reminder that conservatives are the reason why Grindr crashes during the RNC. Well, yeah, and many people have pointed out, there are tons of both out and closeted Republicans who are gay or bi or trans or whatever. There just are. There are a lot. We know that. Having that identity does not mean that you have to think that Bernie Sanders is the coolest or whatever. That's not how politics actually works. Even if in some ways it seems like it should. Lisa Dodson sent to membership. Thank you, Lisa Dodson. I appreciate it. Sick Man Grit says in a super chat, Reichstag fires don't just start themselves, y'all. And by the way, the funniest thing is in the immediate aftermath of the terrible killing, there were right wingers saying it's going to be a Reichstag flag moment or fire moment. Like you're not supposed to be comparing yourself to the Nazis. You're supposed to be pretending to have an issue with us comparing you to the Nazis. Anyway, and by the way, there's a great genre of both TikToks and tweets recently. Have you seen it? Laura Loomer did one. I've seen random conservatives too, where they're all like, well, you guys called us fascists, so F it. Let's just be fascists. Yeah, your arm was twisted into doing it. You didn't want to do it. I made you do it. That's definitely how that works. Anyway, Scandinavian Alien Dragon says in a super chat, did he listen to gangster rap and Marilyn Manson? Feels like a ChatGPT answer to what would someone say in their last text before getting caught. They could turn to that. I don't think that they will. They had started the week, by the way, talking about video games. RFK Jr. did too. But the issue is that all of that stuff was to distract from the shootings, to stop gun violence. They have a better distraction right now, and one that they like the outcome of, which is it's the left, even though there's no evidence of that. Even though there's no evidence that organizations were involved, that anyone else knew about it. They're just making up all of that. So they don't even need the Marilyn Manson stuff. They have more nakedly partisan aims with the way that they're distracting from the fact that yet another person used a gun when they shouldn't have had access to one. Let's jump right back to it. Okay, let's turn now to a little bit more theorizing of conspiracies, starting with this.
The governor of Utah needs to be investigated, full stop. Cox should be investigated. Why the White House allowed, and they're saying we had nothing to do with this guy, but even the first time, when Cash flew out there, why was he allowed to have a speaking role? Who made that decision? He needs to be investigated. His administration needs to be investigated. The mother works for the Behavioral Health. When you get into that thing, it's a rat's nest. They're pushing these drugs and they're pushing all this stuff on these young men. This is why the young men are revolting. This is why they saw Charlie as a breath of fresh air. Hey, I got something that can get you out of the dumps. Read the New Testament of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. How about that? This is why they killed him.
Okay, so this is why they killed him, because the idea is it can't just be what it seems to be, and almost every right-winger believes that it seems like yet another young man who, I guess, at least in his regular life, was somewhat socially isolated. Although it doesn't even seem like a super strong example of that in this case. He had an online community, he had a big family that were participating in activities together and all that. But whatever, he was radicalized on the internet. He seemed somewhat nihilistic. He was using the memes that you've seen, that sort of thing recently. So it can't be that. It also, by the way, can't be the thing that Trump and JD Vance are pretending that it is, that it's like George Soros told him to do it or whatever. I guess it can't even be that. It has to be, now they got Cox? Spencer Cox is a part of it or so. I mean, why was Spencer Cox given a speaking role in it? Because he's the goddamn governor of the state where it happened. That is the most typical, obvious thing ever. When there's a natural disaster, a terrible crime, the leadership of the state that's coordinating with law enforcement is gonna be there. And so, look, Steve Bannon, he's super old, his brain's decaying at least as fast as his skin and body is, but he has to at least still understand that. So he's pretending to not understand that in pursuit of some goal. And we'll get into it. And maybe he has something, but right off the bat, it seems like this is just what Steve Bannon does. This is why he has an audience. This is why he's taken like probably some of InfoWars' audience. It's never good enough. It always has to be something more hidden and more sinister. But in any event, Spencer Cox actually responded to what you just saw. Let's jump now to that.
Steve Bannon talked about you calling to tone down the rhetoric, saying Spencer Cox is a national embarrassment in a time where we need action. He tells us to sing Kumbaya and hold hands with Antifa.
Mr. Bannon is angry and rightfully so. And I'm not saying we have to just sing Kumbaya and hold hands. What I'm saying is we actually should disagree. I think Charlie represented that better than anyone. Charlie said some very inflammatory things, and in some corners of the web, that's all people have heard. If we don't keep talking, that's when the violence starts. Look, there are conflict entrepreneurs out there who benefit from radicalizing us, and I'm not one of those. I don't know that that's particularly helpful.
So that was Spencer Cox, and this is a weird aside, but he looked way younger there than he has in the press conferences and everything. I mean, I guess they weren't getting much sleep. That man's 50 years old. That seems a little bit strange. And I only bring that up to preempt Steve Bannon and Alex Jones starting to talk about him consuming adrenochrome or whatever. But in any event, Spencer Cox did what you would expect. Said, hey, everybody, pump the brakes. Let's not have violence and extremism. And Steve Bannon, he makes his money off of encouraging that stuff. And so, of course, he's going to hate Spencer Cox. And by the way, Cox even said some stuff that you'd think the right would have been really happy about. Like he said, I was praying that if this had to happen here, that it wouldn't be one of us. And you could define that in different ways, that it could be someone from outside of Utah, it could be a Christian, could be a white person, whatever. He wanted it to be some kind of other outsider, which is certainly not the sort of thoughts I would have been expressing in the immediate aftermath of that. But that wasn't good enough either. And to be fair, it isn't just Bannon that is questioning the official story. Candace Owens suggested the administration was withholding information about Kirk's murder in her latest episode. Owens pointed out that before Kirk was killed, he had taken a more critical stance against Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government, and that his comments led to a confrontation with billionaire Bill Ackman, who donates to pro-Israel causes, which there is evidence that that is the case. I had not seen him taking a stronger stance against Israel. He seemed pretty deferential to that, but it's possible that in the immediate lead up to this attack that did actually happen. And so that could be true, and Cox could say things that Bannon doesn't necessarily like. And I understand the inclination that both Bannon and Candace Owens have to not trust this administration. There's no reason to trust them. It's just that they both generally do, except now, which is the interesting thing. And it's not just them. Michael Savage, another far-right podcast host, he suggested that Robinson was just a patsy. He says, we're not hearing or seeing reality. We're supposed to believe a guy's on the run after killing Charlie Kirk, and he paused in the woods to reinstall a barrel, and he leaves it there for us to find, for the FBI to find. I don't believe a word of it. I can't take it anymore. I can't take the bull S. This effing government is lying to us. So good. I guess they're at least willing to question their own administration that they all, cheered for getting in. And look, you could question the way that Robinson acted in the immediate aftermath of it. Why is it that he left the gun if he's then texting his roommate and saying that he's gonna go get it? Yes, there's stuff that's suspicious. In terms of the amount of time it takes to modify the gun, supposedly with some modifications, that's not actually significant. And also, let's bear in mind, the person's not actually a professional assassin. This is not John Wick there or whatever. It's not like he has a standard operating procedure and he diverged from it in this one case. He is a young, crazy person. But again, that doesn't mean that everything that they've said about this case is true. And again, it feels weird to have to agree with that murderer's row of conspiracy theorists, but there isn't a lot of reason necessarily to trust what Kash Patel or Dan Bongino or Pam Bondi or Donald Trump or JD Vance say about this. I don't know, Sharon, what do you think? We live in crazy times.
We do. So crazy that the FBI director flew there, pretended that he was directing the whole, investigation. They didn't catch him. And it's not even a criticism, okay? His dad and the pastor guy and a retired deputy or something said, you got to go, turn yourself in. That's what happened, Kash Patel. So yeah, these are the times we live in. Here's the truth. We are being lied to daily and with much intent. These aren't like, oh, I misspoke and this and that. We're being lied to. It's an active blueprint. So we can't believe it. It doesn't make us crazy. It makes the Times crazy, intentionally so.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, they're gonna interview him. Maybe he'll eventually start cooperating. Maybe the roommate will do like a public interview. Maybe some of the people from the Discord will do a more extensive interview with Ken Klippenstein or other people. And maybe we can get some answers to some of the stuff about the text messages, which admittedly are a little bit weird or leaving the gun behind or whatever. I would just say, just bear in mind, Candace Owens, Michael Savage, Steve Bannon, these are not honest truth seekers. Okay, that's not what they are. They have the positions and the audiences they have because they know what their audiences want to hear, and they'll say whatever it is. So just bear that in mind. And by the way, that doesn't mean that they're wrong 100% of the time or that I can't ever agree with them. I've agreed with them on a few things here, but just bear in mind that they are not people who have some sort of commitment to operating with intellectual honesty. That is as far as possible from what they are. In any event, let's jump now to Congress. Okay. Mike Johnson has now unveiled a stopgap bill that funds the government at its current levels through November 21st and boosts security funding for public officials, which I believe puts the funding to like right before Thanksgiving break, which seems like a terrible time to have something divisive like another funding bill, but this is how the government functions, I guess. And so for right now, there's a September 30th deadline. And so now we get to do the thing we always do, which is the back and forth over what the Democrats are going to ask for. And then also which Republicans are like saying, hey, maybe I won't vote for it. And then they all end up voting for it, okay? I've had that football pulled out from in front of me so many times. I'm not kicking at this point. But here right now is what's in this new bill from Mike Johnson. So there's an additional $58 million for security for public officials. That's $30 million for the executive branch, $28 million for the Supreme Court, $30 million for members of Congress, which it does seem a little bit strange that the amount of aid that's going to the 535 strong body is the same as the one going towards the 9. That seems a little bit odd, particularly when there's been no threats against them, but whatever. And so basically local police that need to do protection can draw the money out of it. And I'm glad that the funds are being set up ahead of time because generally when cops are need to bill things from the Trump administration, they never get paid back. So at least now they'll get their money. There's also a funding fix for the District of Columbia. It had been left with a shortfall of $1 billion previously, so I guess that's good. And the Democrats, as we talked about on yesterday's show, they want to roll back some of what was in the big bill that was passed earlier this year by the Republicans, including bringing back the nearly $1 trillion in Medicaid funding, stopping the tax breaks for millionaires and billionaires. And of course, Mike Johnson is not interested in that. He was sent to DC by the donors to accomplish those goals, and dag nabbit, he's going to accomplish those goals. But he did say this. In exchange for their vote to fund the government, some Democrats said they wanted Republicans to repeal our very popular and very effective reforms to the Medicaid program. Zero chance that we will do that. Well, the only thing that's truly zero chance is the chance that those were popular among the population, because Mike Johnson knows that they were not. That's why they're worried about the midterms. That's why they're gerrymandering across the country. But what? Okay, I guess I'll show you the polls that demonstrate about it. Do you want to see Congress increase spending on Medicaid, decrease spending, or keep it about the same? I'll give decrease a little and decrease a lot. Among the population at large, that is at 17%. And I'm going to argue that cutting about $900 billion is a lot, which means fewer than 10% of the population agrees with Mike Johnson. That is not actually popular. It's not even popular among Republicans. Only 33% of Republicans want to cut Medicaid funding. So he knows he's viciously lying to you, and he knows that there's going to be a political price to pay for it. And in fact, the ironic thing here is that if he were to give in the demands of the Democrats, they probably wouldn't suffer so much in the midterms, but they care so much more about giving the donors what they want than actually maintaining their majority in the House of Representatives come 2026. Now, as I said, there are always some who imply they're not going to pass these bills. Marjorie Greene is one. She said it would be disloyalty to Trump to extend funding levels first approved under former President Biden, although Trump is right now telling them to do this. So it's so weird that Marjorie Greene cloaks everything she does in her superior level of loyalty to Trump, even when she's directly disagreeing with Donald Trump. But it's not just her. Thomas Massie, Victoria Spartz, Warren Davidson are others who, for a variety of reasons, are saying they shouldn't do it this way. I'll believe it when I see it, and I don't believe I'll see it. But Sharon, what do you make of all this?
It's just like it was once a hit primetime show. It's jumped the shark. The narratives it's crazy. The characters it's not believable. You can't, escape reality and get into the show anymore. And it needs to be canceled. This is the same script, different year. I don't know. It's just stupid. And by the way, if it shuts down, does that mean for that period they can't steal from us? I'm confused. Do they still get to steal? And who has access to the money when it shuts down?
Yeah, look, as we've always said in these fights, and I'll end on this, there's utter chaos when the government shuts down. But I would say there would be a little bit less chaos now, because if, like ongoing government services are shut down, I want everyone to bear in mind, there are fewer of those than there were last year. There's fewer departments. The national parks already aren't open most of the time. There's less funding going to all this stuff. So it would be slightly less chaotic than normal. In any event, we're going to take our second break and come back with, okay, we'll take this. We'll continue on with this. I was going to try to split it up, but you know what? Let's stay on Congress. I can tell a look when I see one. Let's jump into this. The party of limited government is now trying to personally manage the crime laws in DC, which I'll remind you is supposed to be in charge of itself. But they've decided, no, we rule everywhere. And so the Republicans have approved a bill that will have harsher penalties for youth offenders. In particular, it would lower the age of a youth offender from 24 to just 18 and require that criminal sentencing be at least as long as the mandatory minimums for adults, overruling local DC policy. It would also require the DC Attorney General to establish a public website that would publish statistics on youth criminal acts. And I think both parts of that are interesting. As I said in our production meeting this morning, they certainly have the web hosting space to put that information online now that they've removed from the internet all the DOJ's studies into political extremism that showed that right-wingers did the vast majority of it. And also, so now criminal sentencing of youths has to be at least as high as the minimum for adults. So it's either the same or higher. You're gonna give them more time when young people do this stuff. I get that you guys are worried about big balls or whatever, but Jesus Christ, that seems a little bit out of step. In any event, the bill passed 240 to 179. 30 Democrats joined the Republicans. And again, you can think that this is a good idea, but it's DC that's supposed to do this. Remember, the party that was always like, states' rights and federalism and local government, all that. When they want to do something, screw local government, screw the separation of the different levels of the federal government. We're going to take control. And so I'm not super surprised by this necessarily, Sharon. They want to keep the focus on their narrative that DC is a Mad Maxian hellscape or whatever. So, and by the way, I understand that DC is not a state. I was not stating that it's a state. I'm saying it's distribution of power between the federal government, states and localities, counties, local. Like that's what federalism is, and they have pretended to care about it in the past. That said, Sharon, what do you make of this?
Yeah, and DC is going to be an easy target because of the way it is. It's not a state, and they can do and impose their will. And talking about youth offenders is code for young Black kids. Okay, who you want to treat like adults. And by the way, the private prisons and everything else is thrown in there. But right now it's about the narrative and the projection and what we want to keep the focus on. And that's what they want to keep the focus on. So no, I'm not surprised either.
Yeah. By the way, you remember Boebert becomes like, she gets into Congress or whatever. And she's like, I'm carrying my gun in DC. I don't care what they say. I do what I want or whatever. It's all about them, man. It's all about them. Screw this area, screw the safety, screw the fact that her having a gun makes everyone around her less safe. There's no one I think I would trust less with a firearm. It's all about them. I don't care about what actually happens there. Anyway, with that said, we will now take our break. We'll be back with more after this. Okay, everybody, let's jump into the comments and see what's going on. Asimov's Prophet says, Sharon, my favorite phrase, trust but verify. I can trust you, but I'm still gonna need verifiable proof. Yeah. And again, like, I do think that there's the potential issue. Like, it's one thing if it's like, we found a thing he typed on a typewriter and it said, I'm gonna get him because of trans. Like the fact that this was a message that went to a person who is still alive and is in a position to deny it, that is something. We can't ignore that. Anyway, TechStan says, I realize the competency ship has sailed long ago, but does Kash Patel even have a law degree? Pretty sure the FBI director typically does. Yeah, so Kash Patel does have some experience, just not experience that would make him capable of running an organization as large, complex, and essential as the FBI. He was not put in that position because he was the best person for the job. He was put in the position because he's a Trump loyalist. It is DEI for MAGA hacks, as the entire government is taken over with that. It's Fox News hosts and people who hosted podcasts and wrote kids' books deifying Donald Trump. The actual qualifications never mattered. Okay, TechStan says, wait, so all three branches of government whip up hate and discontent largely on purpose, and the response is to throw money at their own security. Well, honestly, look, I'm not necessarily against more security for Congress or whatever when you have people like Donald Trump whipping mobs up into a frenzy to go murder them. I do think it's good that they have protection. Anyway, E. Moore, a member for 3 months, says, when it's shut down, does that mean they can't steal from us during that period? Okay, they're quoting Sharon. Because I was gonna say, that is exactly what Sharon said, but they're actually quoting you.
Just a question.
By the way, on the whole thing of, we're gonna defund all these organizations that are inspiring hate and all that stuff, or that might have, like, what if you gave money to people that hosted a protest in 2020, and then someone came to the protest and they committed acts of violence? Does the right understand that knife can cut in both directions? I will remind you, there were a lot of right-wing organizations that paid large sums of money to ship people to DC for January 6th. Ironically, Turning Point USA is one of those. Imagine if a new administration comes in and then takes Turning Point USA's tax exempt status, which I don't even know if they have, but let's say hypothetically that they do, because of their endorsement of things that have led to hate speech or to violence. And again, maybe not them, but there were lots of organizations that were shipping those people in and funding it. Anyway, Gary Cooper says Patel had to explain what Discord is because the average congressperson is 98 years old, 100%. By the way, in this particular case, I'm not even gonna be too hard on them. I use Discord, I've used Discord for a number of years. There was actually a very brief period where TDR was shot through the video chat on Discord, although that did not last. I don't get it necessarily. It seems like such a chaotic place to have a community. And I mean that in terms of, like, you know, I'm on a Warhammer 40K one. I'm on I was on a mechanical keyboards Discord, but it's like how do you find stuff? It's like there's not individual threads. It's all just blech. I don't get it necessarily, but I understand it's super popular. No. Obviously, TYT has a very vibrant Discord. My Patreon has a Discord. For me, it's the fact, like, if it's small, then you can follow the stuff that's going by. It's what I've always felt about, like, super popular, like, Twitch streamers. Like Hassan, like, I'll go on his thing and the chat is going by so fast. How are you engaging in that? Like, you literally can't even see what's being said. So I guess I'm 1,000, everyone. Call me Mitch McConnell. I'll be right back with more news after this. I don't need a Discord tutorial. I understand how it works. I just don't know. how do you use it? Like on Reddit, there's threads. I can go to that thread to see those comments. I don't know. I don't understand it. Okay, maybe I do need it. Jorby, can you give me a Discord tutorial? Anyway, with that said, let's jump into more news, starting with this, actually.
You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
In the files?
In the case file.
Okay.
Go all the way to hell, Kash Patel. And also, by the way, Kennedy, who's like, I'm going to ask you a tough question. What about all the other people? Kash Patel's like, sir, actually, there's no evidence. You just believe me, there's no evidence. And Kennedy's like, oh, okay. And then just moves on. What are you talking about? There's no other people. There's no evidence. That is the most obvious, insulting, spit in your face lie from Kash Patel right there. The second most insulting lie is, if there was, I would bring the case myself. Go to hell. You are one of the leaders of the cover-up of the Epstein scandal, and everybody knows it, and you know that everybody knows it, Kash Patel. That's why even right-wingers are pushing for you to be thrown under the bus on this thing and to lose your job. So we know that the girls were trafficked to other people. We know Virginia Jeffrey in particular was trafficked. We know the person that she was actually trafficked to, and many of the survivors are like doing press conferences like, we want to name names. Please investigate these people. And Donald Trump's like, shut up. I don't care. I'm not interested. And so go to hell with the idea that we don't have evidence of it. That's insane. Nobody buys it. Even CNN's legal analyst was like struggling to not laugh in Kash Patel's face there. Take a look.
Does anybody believe this? Does anybody believe in a world where it was just Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein trafficking girls back and forth? And by the way, in addition to being illogical and implausible, there have been dozens of civil suits brought where victims have alleged that they were trafficked to and sexually abused by dozens of other men. So that is completely non-credible.
So they would have you believe that Epstein list, which we were once told was sitting on a desk at the FBI, just had Epstein written on it in big blocky letters or Comic Sans, Epstein. That was the whole list. There was never anybody else. Ghislaine Maxwell and them they were just trafficking back and forth. That's it. Nobody else. That is so absurd. And then at one point in that testimony, Patel says, we have released all credible information. There's nothing else. And so months into this thing, he's telling you the same thing Pam Bondi said that started this whole scandal, which is we're done. That's it. You're getting nothing else. Kash Patel is implicated as heavily as anyone else in this cover-up. Sharon, what do you make of it?
So for years, they must be really stupid. For years, they peddled this, they pushed this, they got everyone all riled up, which you shouldn't have to do when kids are being trafficked. And now nothing. And now absolutely nothing, okay? It's not credible, but it tells you how brazen they are. You mentioned these women now who are coming forward, talking about horrible things, how they were manipulated, trafficked, just abused in every kind of way. And they could care less. They're alive, they've lawyered up, they're speaking, they're saying they may release the list on their own, they know who these people are. And yet, this is his sworn testimony. It's brazen.
Yeah, 100%. You know, I was just thinking, you know what I would like to see? The new big thing in political media is these jubilees, right? Cenk did one. I want to see a goddamn jubilee of one director of the FBI versus 21 survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. That's what I want to see. Kash Patel. Oh, you're so big and brave, Kash Patel. Oh, you're tough. And you want justice, Kash Patel. Then sit down and answer the goddamn questions of those women who have been desperately trying to get anyone in your administration to give them the time of day, unsuccessfully, because you're covering it all up. Let's get Jubilee to set that thing up. Anyway, with that said, we're gonna move into one more story to close out the hour. Kristi Noem is once again facing backlash because of her pathological need to just produce social media moments to try to go viral. That's the entire reason she wanted to be the head of the DHS, was to get cooler uniforms and to fly and drive cooler vehicles. But in this particular case, she's putting up all these anti-immigrant, fear-mongering posts. So she shared a video, and I believe we can put up the B-roll as I explain of the video that she shared. And in the clip, you see an example of yet another US citizen getting swept up in their deportation crusade. So one of the women, one of the men in this video is Joe Botello. It's 37-year-old, a US citizen and resident of Texas. And so what do you know? The damn federal government sweeps into Texas and starts rounding up US citizens. Alex Jones was right all along. But unfortunately, it's happening under the Trump administration, so Alex Jones is not going to care. And so Noem posted that video, and she also posted this. This week, a brave ICE government officer was dragged many yards by a car after a criminal illegal alien resisted arrest. His life was put at risk and he sustained serious injuries. President Trump has been clear. If politicians will not put the safety of their citizens first, this administration will. I was on the ground in Chicago today to make clear we're not backing down. Just this morning, DHS took violent offenders off the streets with arrests for assault, DUI, and felony stalking. Our work is only beginning. Weirdly, she didn't mention the whole "we arrested another American citizen" thing, and is pretending, by the way, that everyone who wasn't a violent criminal or an American citizen was what? Again, just more law-abiding people that are being swept up in this insane and wasteful and un-American enterprise that they're involved in. And she could have cared enough about the actual mission to like edit that part out, or just do the tweet, by the way, and not have the video. But she's like, I traveled all this way. I put on this hat. I got my makeup done. What am I not gonna post the video of us violating the civil liberties of another American? No, I gotta go viral, man. What do you think, Sharon?
That it's that part, we say it half jokingly, but that's exactly what happened here. There's gotta be someone who's not a nincompoop on her staff. One person, half, 50% nincompoop maybe, who said, we better be sure about this. She said, who cares? I already picked out my outfit, dude. Why are you being a downer? And because they don't care, because nothing's going to happen to her or them. She's gonna keep doing what she does, and she just has this just vapid look on her face every time they have one of these marathon cabinet meetings. And yet she's still there. She's still there.
Let's not get too downer on the vapid look in her eyes. Part of that is once you've murdered a dog in cold blood, there's nothing left of your soul. And also those surgeries and injections have an effect on the ability of the face to emote. But anyway, let's move on now to Joe Botello, the American citizen who was swept up, said, I'm just blessed that I'm still alive. He described how armed masked agents broke down his door, placed him and his roommate in handcuffs. I'm glad I was able to grab my wallet in order to have some type of identification. I'm still a bit in shock. I'm just glad that I'm okay. I recommend that everyone always have their documentation, passport if they can, and any type of ID that would identify them. Stay safe. He said, by the way, he was never told why he was cuffed or read his rights while he was being detained. And I just want to point out to MAGA, if they can bust down your door in Texas and haul you away without ever reading your rights, what castle doctrine do you think you really have? And by the way, if they're masked and they're not saying while they're there, they might not have any identification. Is it impossible that some Texas conservative is gonna greet that with gunfire at some point? This is just such a stupid way to manage things and so deeply un-American. And he's right, man. If he hadn't had his identification, we might have only found out once he was already in El Salvador or Sudan or something. And by the way, they have deported US citizens before, and they've held in detention for multiple weeks people who had their documentation, had their passports. And so that won't even necessarily save you. But just think about a Texas resident having to say, hey, everybody in America, get your documents in order to potentially save you from Big Brother. We have fallen far in less than a year. Anyway, that's unfortunately all the time we have for the show. We have more coming up in the aftermath, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back, one and all, to the Aftermath. John here, Sharon as well. Sharon, how is everything going for you? How are you doing these days?
Hanging in there. Weather's good. I have another audition today.
For what?
That I actually missed yesterday, and they gave me an extra day, which almost never happens. It was an emergency. Okay.
That's nice.
It's a movie. It's a lot of dialogue that I had to learn, but I'll go back over it today. But yeah,
that's cool. Okay, let's see. Oh, by the way, Jeff Testpilot had put this and says, don't ever forget Caitlin Collins started out as a far-right reporter, which, yes, she did. I would say, I think she produces better moments with elected officials than almost anyone on those shows. So it's possible that she did start as a right reporter, and she might still be very conservative. I have no idea. But she's been willing to ask tough questions of them, including Donald Trump, in a way that the vast majority have not. And so
he called her nasty too, didn't he? So I mean, that's got to stand for something.
Dragon Dancer says in Super Chat, John, thank you so much for suggesting Quacks of Quedlinburg. Got to play with friends this weekend and it was so fun. Hi, fellow dragons. I'm glad you enjoyed it. That's one of my wife and I's favorite games. If someone's interested, there's a new edition that's just called Quacks, so you don't have to try to spell Quedlinburg. Anyway, CDN Northstalk Dad says Kash Patel is a pro-Trump children's book author. That is true. Gargoyle Dragon says, John, love your Kash spattle Mickey Mouse voice. Marvel star Sharon should hook you up. Love you both. I think the job is what she's saying. Yeah, can you get me into that upcoming that movie they're doing, the big team up? Anyway, it's why am I blanking now on Doom, Dr. Doom?
I'll look into it.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, by the way, we had a comment. Somebody was asking if we were gonna have good news on the show today, which no, but I can give you a bit of good news though. It's not in the news, but I was leaving for work yesterday and I walk out my front door and I hear my daughter and she said, Papa. And so I turn back and then she comes up and she's staying there and she says, Tiss. And she meant kiss. She wanted me to give her a goodbye kiss. And so that is your good news, America. Okay.
That makes up for everything.
Yeah. Okay, well, with that said, let's turn now to less positive news, starting with this. Marjorie Greene had yet another disastrous hearing where both Jasmine Crockett and AOC rudely ruined her attempt to conspiracize. Take a look.
The U.S. Army sprayed some sort of chemical fog over these people, basically making them lab rats in an experiment. And that's how people feel today about all types of weather modification and geoengineering. No one wants to be a lab rat. And I appreciate your comments where we only have one Earth, and we really honestly should be taking care of that.
So look, that's fine. We should. I agree. I would love for the Republican Party to care more about the Earth, but I also listened to a bunch of her on that hearing right there. And she went off at one point about how we need clean air and clean water and clean land. We don't need stuff poisoning it. And the point she was making was, let's not do the weather modification, the injection of whatever into the atmosphere. Not that like, hey, maybe we get rid of coal and fossil gas and all that stuff that's actually polluting all. No, she doesn't care about that. She only cares about the weather modification. She saw like a sci-fi movie back in the 90s and she has never been able to move past that thing. And nobody, no matter how many scientists you parade before her in these hearings, nobody can get through her thick skull about what that technology is, what it is capable of, who's actually using it. In her mind, there is like a bald Jewish billionaire in like a volcano top lair who's just twisting knobs and dials and creating the hurricanes or something, which I am almost certain is not happening. In any event, I want to turn now to slightly more positive stuff involving Jasmine Crockett responding to a little bit of this.
The Republicans have been so busy protecting pedophiles and rapists that they forgot what this subcommittee is supposed to be about. We're supposed to be talking about improving government efficiency. We're supposed to be talking about protecting taxpayer dollars from corruption. It's actually been 84 days since our last hearing. The chairwoman could have called a hearing about how this is the weakest hiring market since 2017, and we all know who the president was in 2017. We could have had a hearing on how Donald Trump's illegal tariffs are increasing the cost of living for their constituents. We could have had a hearing on why the Bureau of Prisons is accommodating human traffickers like Ghislaine Maxwell. We could have had a hearing on how the president is using the office to enrich himself and his family and friends. We could have had a hearing on how this administration is illegally stealing more than $400 billion in congressionally directed funds, but they'd rather distract you from the fact that their constituents are likely to die from their decision to cut health care and SNAP before some chemtrail conspiracy.
Yeah, it's just like the chemtrail thing is just so like Alex Jones 2015. It's just so old, it's played out. It's not a thing. It's not a thing that if you were to rank the environmental threats facing America or the world, it would not be in the top 1,000. And so of course, she's the chairwoman, Marjorie Greene. She can waste all of our time, waste all these scientists' time asking questions that she will not understand the responses to because it's all motivated reasoning. She's not interested in learning if she's even capable of it. She's interested in pushing already massively debunked conspiracy theories. Sharon, what do you make of this?
There's definitely a lack of a capacity issue there. Look how fast that was. Marjorie Taylor Greene earned some praise from those who tend to oppose everything she stands for her stance on Epstein. And she spoke with conviction and was pretty smart in some of the things she said. And now there's this dim-witted nonsense that she's spewing, and all that goes out the window. It's just, you're just not being credible in any way. And like you said, she does not wish to learn. And she says it with such, intensity. Like she just knows she's right. And she's dead ass wrong.
Dead ass
How's that
wrong.
feel? Right?
100%. By the way, in the extended thing, she was talking to these scientists about how the climate has changed over the last 150 years. And she kept trying to get them to say, well, wasn't there an ice age? I mean, it's happened over time, right? And all of them are like, yes, no, there are long-term cycles over tens or hundreds of thousands of years in the climate. And that is not what we're talking about in this last 150 years. And the way I liken it to is lightning can strike in a forest and generate a forest fire. There are forest fires that just happen. That said, if a person lights a forest fire, you investigate and convict them. You don't just say, well, whatever, it happened naturally once. Yeah, the same sort of thing can happen. But if it happens over the course of 30,000 years and it happens over the course of 150 years, those aren't the same thing, even if they point in a similar direction. And it doesn't mean that they're caused by the same thing. And she is a full grown ass woman. How is she so incapable of understanding that? She was literally sitting in front of career experts, scientists, trying their damnedest to explain it to her, and she was incapable of it. Either incapable or just not willing. She wasn't going to allow accurate information to penetrate her skull. Now that said, let's close with just a little bit more positivity, not in the message, but in terms of actually focusing on what matters. And to that, we turn to AOC.
Do you know how many jobs have been threatened or lost due to the Trump administration's closures of clean energy projects in the last 6 months or so, the first half of this year?
I'm not aware of any such analysis.
91,000. In Colorado's 8th district, Amprius Technologies canceled plans to construct a $190 million battery plant in Brighton, Colorado. In Georgia, 12, an EV plant was canceled due to the Trump administration and DOE's freezing of the EV charging program. Registered Georgia has a population of 157 people. They lost out on 166 jobs. They lost more jobs than they have people in that town. What is the DOE's plan to replace those jobs in those affected areas?
I'll say this is beyond the scope of what I'm prepared to testify to today. I'd be happy to take the question for the record in regard to the analysis that you cited here.
Yeah, he can't really be expected to answer that because they don't have a plan. They're not gonna, those jobs are not gonna be replaced. We're just gonna drill for more like oil or whatever, get more coal. No, just their jobs are just lost. They're done. And the damage that's done to industries across America, our ability to generate our own national solar industry, we're gonna lose out on that. China's gonna take even more of a lead. The death to the subsidies of EVs is gonna hurt American auto manufacturers. Jobs are gonna be lost as a result of that. This is just stupid and self-destructive. Donald Trump just aimed a machine gun at our feet and held down the trigger as we shoot ourselves in the foot over and over and over and over again. And they did it for ideology. They did it because for some reason, they do not want clean energy. They despise it. They hate the idea of us tapping into the wind or the sun or whatever. It has to be coal, it has to be oil, it has to be dirty. It has to poison the air and the ground and the water, as Marjorie Greene pretends to be opposed to, but can only focus again on contrails or whatever. Any final point to you, Sharon?
Yeah, just the little chyron you put up. Embarrassing. She's embarrassed herself again. And all those who follow that bizarre science, their version of it anyway. It's just embarrassing that she's elected. Georgia, her district's right here where I am in Georgia, and it's just insanity.
It is insanity. My God.
Insane.
Anyway, let's move on to some other news. First, though, David Rodriguez says in a super chat, right-wingers who want to associate Robinson with the left since he doesn't want trans folk to die, as if people like Alex Jones, Mark Robinson, and Nick Fuentes don't exist. I don't necessarily fully follow. It's possible that I'm missing something. I apologize, but I do appreciate the message. Thank you. Okay, with that said, let's jump now to this. So the Trump administration is now telling the National Park Service to strip out references to slavery. Not surprisingly, they don't want anyone to learn about slavery, but this even includes ordering the removal of one of the most famous images from the Civil War era, showing a man, and we can actually bring up that photo. It's a man whose back is covered in scars from whippings. That is one of the clearest, most undeniable pieces of evidence of what slavery actually was, how brutal and barbaric and savage and animalistic it was. And they want it gone because they don't want you to understand that. It's much harder to spread this narrative of, oh, slavery was benevolent and oh, they got jobs and it was great and everyone loved it and that was taken away by the damn Northerners and all that. No, you see that and you think, oh no, that's terrible. I would never want that to happen to me or someone I care about. It's insane that that was the way our system worked for hundreds of years. And so they're getting rid of it. And this is a part of this push since March, actually. It was an order to the Interior Department to cut anything seen as disparaging Americans, including slave-owning, murderous Americans. You can't disparage them. And instead we focus on greatness. It's all about our greatness, by the way. That photo is called The Scourged Back. It shows a man named Peter Gordon. A reproduction of the photo was on display at Georgia's Fort Pulaski National Monument. Fort Pulaski was a former Confederate prison camp, later taken over by the Union Army, and that is now done. And I just want to be very clear, like, we throw around the term propaganda a lot. Everything's propaganda. They're saying that having this accurate historic information about slavery is propaganda. But I just want to remind everyone that of all the genres of propaganda, there's no more classic than the government telling you everything's great, everything has always been great, we've been great, don't down on us, we're awesome and only getting better. That's like the main classic recipe of propaganda. And that's what Donald Trump is doing here. And it's one thing for him not wanting those displays in Mar-a-Lago or something. It's one thing for him to not want to learn about this history, but he is insisting and using the power of the federal government to make sure that the next generation doesn't learn that people going around America and going to our historic sites cannot know accurate information about what our country has done. And I think it's grotesque. Sharon, what do you make of it?
It's grotesque, and it's not in my orbit to say I want less information and I don't want the truth. and I want a lack of context, and I want propaganda. Some people do want that. Some people want to pop pills and escape reality. Okay. And maybe then they get hooked. This just isn't who I am. I want the good, the bad, in a relationship. I want the same thing. I just want to know who you are, and then I can make sound decisions and I can better myself. Same thing with a doctor. So I don't understand these people at all. They're bizarrely, their desire to stay ignorant.
Yeah. And I think in this block, we can identify one of the most consistent stances of this political movement going back, more than 100 years, okay? Because white supremacists don't want you to acknowledge white supremacist violence, whether it happened back in the 19th century or today. So they get rid of the evidence from slavery. And now the DOJ, as we mentioned yesterday on the show, has deleted its own study from a website showing far more domestic terrorism committed by far-right extremists. So you don't get to know about the stuff that happened forever ago. And they would say, well, that's ancient history. You don't need to know about it. You don't get to know about the stuff that's happening right now. We're gonna hide that too. Not because it's inaccurate, it's not. We just don't want you to know that stuff. And they tell us that they're for free speech, free expression. They care about, facts don't care about your feelings. But they do seem to care about my feelings. And my feelings are very, very delicate. They're like a tiny little baby rabbit. And you need to just hold them very delicately, okay? Don't be mean to my feelings. That's how the right is treating American history. We have to move on rapidly because we only have time for this one more story, and I want to make sure that we get to it. So whenever we're ready, why don't we jump into this?
In terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Is it because of blowback?
Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
Man, he cannot even do an impersonation of an actual human being. But that was a little while back. And obviously Elon Musk could see that people utterly hated his guts more and more with every passing day, in no small part because everything he did in politics was terrible. And so he assured us he's gonna be dialing back the political spending, unless he finds a reason to do it again. So it was never a really convincing case that he was making, and it proves to not be true because almost instantly he was talking about setting up his own party, which also he didn't do because you can never trust a damn thing that comes out of his mouth. But there's every reason to believe that in the midterms and with the next presidential election, he'll once again flood hundreds of millions of dollars into our system. Because the reason to do it will be, I can make more money. I can get more government contracts. I can twist the system to benefit people like me. And so that's what he's going to do. Now, doing that is fine. It's allowed in our system because the billionaires have rigged the system in their benefit. But for Tesla, it's not a good thing. It's hurt their brand identity. Their company is reeling as a result of it. And there are some investors in Tesla that wanted to save the company by stopping Elon Musk from doing these insane and toxic displays of political spending. And so one, Jay Batera, wanted to establish a neutrality proposal, basically, that would have prohibited Tesla leadership from making political statements, endorsements, or contributions in support or opposition to political parties or candidates. So the Tesla board argued in a letter to the Trump SEC that proposal sought to micromanage the company and that Tesla itself lacks the power or authority to implement such a measure. And so the SEC has actually sided with the board there. I just want to be very clear. You have all the power you need to make sure that that happens. You can't necessarily block the spending, but what you can establish is a binding commitment that if a member of the Tesla leadership does this spending, they lose their position. They're no longer CEO or they lose their position on the board. That is the easiest thing in the world to do. And there is every financial reason to do that. You need to begin the likely multi-year quest to get people to once again identify your brand with something having to do with cars rather than toxic right-wing anti-Semitic political activism. And they decided, no, we're gonna stick with Elon Musk, as they always do. They never make decisions based on the actual best interests of their shareholders. Instead, they're the Elon Musk defense force. And in this case, they got the protection and assistance of the Trump administration to save Elon Musk. And it is not just Jay Batera that wants this, by the way. They had a thing where you could post investor questions for these calls. And the second, third, and fourth most popular questions were all about Elon Musk's politics. So this is a thing that a broad base of investors in Tesla want something done about, but the board doesn't care because they care more about Elon Musk than they do about the fate of their company. Sharon, what do you think?
Isn't that stupid? And I mean, the record contract that he got, I don't know, is it $1 trillion or something? Billion, who knows? It's just, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a company that's going to be strong for, eons to come? Or are you looking for a big mouth blowhard who appears like beam me up, Scotty, in those videos, looking like he's depressed and swollen and just angry and petulant? I guess that's what they want. They want to hang with Elon Musk, perhaps his friend Big Balls, and so you get what you pay for.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if the way that he acts in those videos, I don't know if that's just a thing about him. I don't know if it's, I've never personally come down off of a ketamine bender or whatever. Maybe it's just a withdrawal thing. I don't know. But he's been on one this last week. Yeah. He has posted multiple times that they're coming for us. There, I guess, is because it's not good enough that one person attacked Charlie Kirk. That's not conspiratorial enough. So instead there's a they, and we need to fight back. He is repeatedly using violent imagery, violent terms to inspire the hundreds of millions of people that follow him to do something. And most of them will not do anything, but it's possible there will be a couple people who take him at his word that he wants them to fight back, and they just might. And so you should be just as angry at Tesla as you were like 6 months ago over this, because he's every bit as toxic as he was. Anyway, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the show. Sharon, as always, thank you. I hope that the audition goes really well. I'd love to see another movie.
Me too. Yeah, and I hope your daughter always asks you to come back for a tiss.
Thank you. It didn't happen
today. I can tell you,
today,
my 13-year-old,
Oh.
Yeah,
I hope so.
Stays forever. Don't touch me. So whatever. But thank you.
Oh, my daughter often just stiff arms me away from her when I go for a kiss.
Oh my goodness, it's lovely.
Tomorrow.
So it's working out as planned.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody, tomorrow, definitely tune in. It's going to be a John solo show, so I'm going to need your support. I don't want to just be talking to myself, so I hope to see you there. For now. Oh, and also members hangout tomorrow after the show for the tier 3 members. Until then, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.